Good morning, and welcome to church. Welcome to Tulk's service of celebration. And that's what we intend to do here, to celebrate his life. So on behalf of the family, we welcome you. And your presence here this morning shows your support and your love to the family during the passing of their loved one, Tulk. And we are so pleased that you are here today. Just want to get some courtesies done out of the way at the top. I want to say thank you to our musicians today who consented to come and be with us and help us with the worship. Our soundman, Eugene Bingle, the ushers, young man operating the cameras back there and the switchboard, so for the online audience, and we are so pleased that they came out today. Those who brought food for refreshments following the graveside service, big huge thank you to the people of our church. And with that being said, let me remind you that there will be some a fellowship time after the graveside service over in this room here, and come back and mingle with the family following the service at the cemetery. All right? So please do that if you have time. The service is on the inside of your bulletin, and it's been planned by the family. And so we are going to get you to stand, and we're going to begin our service of celebration by singing What a Day That Will Be. Let's stand together. There is coming a day when no heartache shall come, no more clouds in the sky, no more tears to dim the eye. All is peace forevermore on that happy golden shore. What a day, glorious day that will be. What a day that will be, when my Jesus I shall see. When I look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. When he takes me by the hand, leads me through the promised land. What a day, glorious day that will be. There'll be no sorrow there, no more burdens to bear, no more sickness, no pain, no more parting over there, and forever I will be with the one who died for me. What a day, glorious day that will be. And what a day that will be, when my Jesus I shall see. When I look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. When he takes me by the hand, leads me through the promised land. What a day, glorious day that will be. Let's sing the chorus again. And what a day that will be, when my Jesus I shall see. When I look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. When he takes me by the hand, leads me through the promised land. What a day, glorious day that will be. I'm inviting Carol Ann Rowe Langdon to come, and she's going to read a scripture right after that, Myrna Party with a solo. As Carol Ann is making her way, I want to recognize the clergy that are here. We have some of Windsor Pentecostal Church's staff here today. Pastor Bill Sampson I saw on the way in. Pastor Jeff Slade, our assistant pastor, and Pastor Andy, our youth and tech pastor, back here. And if there are other clergy here, I'm sorry, but I'm looking. Did I miss someone? If you're a clergy, wave at me. Yeah, I got you guys. Former pastors, anything like that. Where Grace Vokey is here, Cal King is here, Pastor Calvin King. Yes, I see you. So welcome. We are so glad that you came out today to support this family. Carol Ann. You can be seated, by the way.
Well, it's so good to see such a good crowd on such a beautiful day that God blessed us with. Because the last few days we've been wondering what the weather was going to be and what the fire was going to be like. But God blessed us today to honor our wonderful friend Hart. So when Arlene texted me night before last about scripture reading, I thought, okay, I'm sure there's lots of other people she could have chosen, but Hart and I, we had a good friendship. He was a wonderful neighbor. I met him back probably mid-'80s. I met Arlene early in 1981 when we first purchased a home in 292 Granville Lights, which was just down the street from Art and Marie. And as the years went by, I got to know Art and Marie quite well from attending the same church and just hanging out around the neighborhood. So this morning I just wrote a few words because Arlene said I can speak a little bit. So I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to say what I felt about Hart. So what really came to my mind was how kind and thoughtful and considerate Art was to me. And he would make me smile every time I seen him. And I know at one point in my life when I really needed some encouragement, I received a letter from Art and Marie while I was living in Gander. And they had a monetary gift in that card. And she made a point of saying Hart and her both agreed to send this to me. And I was just so thankful. And that memory stands out so vivid in my mind that I can't help but mentioning that. And I was able to attend their 60th wedding anniversary celebration in the Carmelite. And that was such a nice afternoon. And we just had a good time together, and it was just a wonderful occasion. And I'm just so thankful that Art and Marie was able to stick together through thick and thin, even though they had struggles, I'm sure, on the way, that they were able to pull together instead of pulling apart. My dad would say, we need to pull together in our marriages. And I know for a fact that Art and Marie pulled together during their time of 62 years, Marie? Almost. 63, wow. So, yeah, I'm just so thankful that they left such a wonderful example for me. So I just wanted to give Hart those few words of my memories of him today. So the scripture that the family picked out was in Ecclesiastes 3, verses 1 to 8. And those verses are, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck what is planted. A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh, and a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain, and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to throw away, a time to tear, and a time to sow, a time to keep silent, and a time to speak, a time to love, and which Hart really knew how to do that, and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. And I picked scripture, John, chapter 14, verses 1 to 3. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself. And I'm sure this Sunday, Art was received by Jesus. So I'm so thankful for that Art took time to make that commitment to Jesus. And where I am, there you may be also. And it's so comforting today that Art is in the arms of Jesus, and we can have comfort to know that he's not suffering anymore. And I just want to thank Arlene for this opportunity of being able to share about my memories about Art. Thank you.
Carol Ann, I share some of your thoughts. When Arlene texted me, I thought, I could make a set of cookies instead. And I didn't ask her if I could have permission to have anything to say, but I do have a few words. When I sing, my biggest struggle is usually, what is it I'm gonna sing? Because I always feel like I need to make a connection to the situation or the experience or the person. So I didn't confirm whether very quickly, and instead went about town to do a few errands. And I got in the car, and I hadn't left the house too far before I started singing, I've Got a Mansion. And I thought, really? Where'd that song come from? That's not something that I would normally sing. And I was driving around town, and I was belting it out. And then I kind of felt, well, that's what I was supposed to sing. And then I thought, well, that don't really make sense to me. Art, Tulk, and a mansion? Like, he'd rather be in a cabin. And I was trying to make sense of the song and what it would mean for this occasion and this celebration. So I went on, I done my business, I came back home, and I started Googling popular funeral songs and hymns to sing, and nothing really registered with me, and I couldn't get rid of this hymn. So what I know about Mr. Tulk, because that was what I would probably call him more than anything else, or refer to him as Arlene's dad, was that he loved to fix things, make things, build things, glue, nails, weld. And if he wanted some gadget that hadn't made it to the market yet, he found a way to make it, his own version. I knew he loved the woods, he loved hunting, he loved fishing. I never did associate him to be a man, and I apologize for reading, but it was so much going around in my head, I thought, I can't forget this stuff, I gotta write it down. I never did associate him to be a man who aspired to have brand names, or to be concerned with the latest in fashion, or having the biggest home or the newest vehicle. So none of this was still lining up with me, but I still couldn't let it go. So I printed off the lyrics to the hymn, because sometimes I find if you read it, it registers a little bit differently to me than if I just sing it. So verse 1 reflected, I felt, their comfortable family home and their love for cabin and cottage life as a couple and as a family. When I read verse 2, I had no trouble making a connection to that, because I'm sure those words reflected his latest years of torment and often feeling tested as he struggled with his health. Verse 3 I wasn't real sure about, because I didn't have what I felt was personal information about his spiritual journey. So when I finally got to read the obituary, that was confirmed for me as well when I later read how he expressed to go to heaven. And verse 3 talks about being heaven-bound. And I say all that to say this: it wasn't Mr. Tulk's skill set. It wasn't his reckless or unabandoned love for his family. It wasn't his desire to help others or to give. It wasn't what he knew or what he could do. But in his obituary, it said at the age of 50, he made a decision to have a relationship with Jesus. So it wasn't what he knew, it was who he knew. And on Sunday morning, his address changed from a single room, wing C at the Carmelite. And his desire to go to heaven became a reality. And I could go on some more, and I always find that my imagination kind of gets the better of me sometimes. And no deep theological dig into this comment that's going to follow, but I thought, we're talking about art talk. And I'm sure we're all going to get our mansions, but what's that going to look like? And I thought when he got there, he was going to have a conversation with somebody about what that mansion should look like for him. And he'd probably put a request in that be tucked away in some trees along the waterfront so he could throw out a line maybe from time to time. Sing along with me when you know the chorus. I've got a mansion just over the hilltop in that bright land where we'll never grow old, and someday yonder we will never more wander, but walk on streets that are pure as gold. I'm satisfied with just a cottage below, a little silver and a little gold. But in that city where the ransomed will shine, I want a gold one that's silver
Myrna. Arlene comes at this time to share a family tribute. And Trevor. Arlene and Trevor, sorry.
Moral support.
Moral support, moral support, you got it.
Now I'm going to warn you. It's not often in my life that I've had to be behind pulpits like this.
First time for me.
But other times I've always been out of time constraint. Because, you're given presentations for missions is usually why I would be in such a role. But today, we are taking our liberty. And how long or short that is, I have no idea. But anyway, yes, Trevor, well, he says he can't physically say anything. He offered to be here in case I start to grow weak. Okay. So, today, we knew it was coming. We've had 5 years of him being at Carmelite, or in long-term care, almost. But I could never start to get my thoughts together for what I would say today. It was just like if you started doing that, it's like it was actually going to happen. So anyway, last night at 10 o'clock, I had to start. And at 3 o'clock, I was still on the go with it. Not that it was hard to find something to say. The issue was trying to condense it enough that, you wouldn't be all falling asleep on us. But anyways, I do have things written down, and then during the night and this morning, there's things in the margin, so I have no idea how all this is going to come out. But anyways, we will do our best to pay tribute to the best dad ever. Dad coming into this world on May the 9th, 1933 in Bishop Falls, and being raised by a mom whose heart knew no limits when it came to giving and helping and loving, is why we, Maurice, Trevor, and I have been blessed with the best of dads. Our childhood was filled with so much love, fun, and adventure because that was our dad. He was a soapy man, and by soapy I mean he loved giving hugs and kisses. As much as of a toughie as he was always known for his big bear hugs and handshakes, bring you to your knees. A lot of last night was people saying, "Oh, I remember your father's handshake." I almost not want to give my hand because I knew what he was going to do. He worked hard, long hours at the mill to provide a very comfortable life for us. But when he wasn't at the mill, he was ours. He was never too tired to pack everything up and head to the cabin for the weekend, or to hitch on the boat to head to the Beothic or Catamaran for a water ski, or to pile all the neighborhood kids into the pan of the truck to go for a swim at Peters River, which, by the way, he never ever lost a kid, or to heading off summer fishing, or to walk down to the pond, scrape it off, and tie a Coleman lantern to a pole so that we could play hockey, and most times he'd play with us. Or to fill up the snow machine and tow us around and around and around, or let one of the bigger boys do it for him. He used to grow vegetables and raise animals in on the field and back. But when we were old enough to start playing ball, he cleared a different area for his vegetables so that we could have the field for all the neighborhood kids to be playing baseball in there. And that's a big memory for a lot of us Grenfell Heightsers. Tulk's Pond, Tulk's Hill for sliding, Tulk's Field for playing ball. Yeah, we just had our own little paradise. And the list just goes on and on and on. Like I picture many times the getting ready to go for our vacation at Birchie Lake. We used to do a lot of camping around Newfoundland, and much to Mom's chagrin, again, once we started going to Birchie Lake, that was it. We didn't want to go anywhere else. Nobody wanted to go anywhere else. So Dad would load up the truck. He would have the house trailer in tow, and then the speedboat in tow, and then that was all put. So it was three vehicles, three things. And then everything piled into all of that, and was it 50 gallons? The motorbikes and the pedal bikes and surfboards and
55-gallon drums of fuel.
Yeah, which would cost quite a bit nowadays, wouldn't it? Yeah, but I still think he would have did it for us. And even at that, lots of times we'd have to end up going to back to Bayvert Junction to get more fuel. But anyways, he knew how to have fun. And he liked seeing everybody else have fun. If he could make it happen for you, it was going to happen. Times at Birchie Lake when one of the Jones boys would come and he was in a wheelchair. But Dad always made it possible for him to get in the boat and go for a ride. Yeah. Now, we literally had hundreds of messages of condolence come in, and I'm just going to do 3. One was from Eddie, our cousin, who grew up across the street from us. Eddie says, "He was my hero as a child. My dad died when I was 2 years old, and your dad, being my father's brother, was the one I looked up to growing up. I remember him and Chad's dad taking Maurice and I on a few trips to the cabin on Canning's Lake, and the fun we had, especially when Roy was in the mood to be funny. He would have us in stitches, and Uncle Art's laughter would rise above the rest. What a laugh he had, almost musical. I haven't been in his life much the last few years, but he was always in my heart, and he always will be. Cherish the memories and be thankful for all the years he was with us. Please God, we'll meet again one day." And from Todd Osmond, a neighbor from across the street, he says, "Your dad was a wonderful man. When I was a kid, I always thought he was the perfect dad." And from Jeff Lane, our neighbor next door, he says, "My condolences to you and the whole family. Awesome neighbors for life. I'll never forget him. He was one special dad to us all. All our love from my family to yours." We don't ever remember Dad saying he was too tired or he didn't have time, especially if he had promised. And that was instilled in us. If at all humanly possible, you never break your promise. And he never wanted to bubble wrap us, much to Mom's chagrin at times. While we were very young, he drove home the importance of firearm safety with letting Buddy here and Maurice use a pellet gun at a very, very young age. He then went on to the .22, then the .410, then the .30-30, and so on. Yes. Yes, these guys were hunting since before you can remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much from when he could walk. He taught us all how to drive as soon as our feet could reach the pedals, because we used to go to some crazy places with him. And me being the oldest, and like Maurice is 7 years younger than me, so I had a lot of years going with Dad by myself. And down in New Bay Road, like 50-odd years ago, like that was out of the world. So we'd be going down getting gravel or sods or berry picking or something. And Dad used to say, I got to teach you to drive, because if anything happens to us down here, how in the world are you ever going to get, no cell phones, how are you ever going to get out of here? So anyway, as soon as I could reach the pedal, move the gear stick, I learned how to drive. And had a standard all up through until this last vehicle. And you have your own experiences with learning to drive?
Yes, absolutely. One of it was when we'd leave from church. That was one of the things, I guess, that coaxed me to go to church. Was I could drive on the way home.
Yeah, he had to have the peace of mind that we could survive in any situation.
Whether driving the boat or anything at the age long before, I guess it would be considered child endangerment now. At that time, it was giving us the skills to be able to survive anywhere and be able to get ourselves out of any situation.
Yeah, that's right. You want to tell them about the Cannings Lake thing when you were checking your traps?
Yeah, I guess there's one that comes back to mind. I remember at 12 years old, my sister used to drive me up to our cabin on Badesbury Road and drop me off in the evenings. It used to be in the fall. And it would be dark at that time, and I'd have to go in and walk into the lake and cross the lake in the night, get a fire going, then check my traps the following day. Once again, at this stage in life, I guess people would look at that as maybe not being responsible. But however, he knew that we had the skills to be able to do that. But having said that, I know when I'd be on my trap line, I had looked up and seen him in the woods, keeping an eye on me, just to make sure that everything was okay.
Yeah, it's not hard to understand why they were best buddies. Was our dad perfect? Absolutely not. But he was perfect for us. Without any manual to go by, without any prior experience, he helped shape our lives to make us into the people God created us to be. Even through his long battle with mental illness, he was still teaching us. When Dad turned 50, a whole new chapter opened up for us as a family. The dad we knew became a man we didn't know. He was no longer the one we could bring our problems to. No longer the one who could fix whatever was broken. He became the exact opposite of who he had always been. There was no logical reason why this man should be depressed. He had a family who loved him, good job. Physically, he was a very healthy man who took pride in keeping himself in shape. We were all healthy. It just made no sense. And after much testing, he was diagnosed with having a chemical imbalance. Before this happened to our dad, I don't think either of us realized just what a hell on earth existence it is for anyone dealing with depression. It has given us a whole new appreciation for mental health issues. It doesn't just happen to people who are down and out or to people who have made bad life choices. It can happen to people who have everything in the world going for them. Like our dad. We are so grateful that some medications worked for a while and that we got our old dad back for periods of time. But then his system would become immune to the medication and we'd have to try to find something else that would work. This roller coaster ride continued for many years. We've learned that it's not just in your head. We've learned not to say, you've got to get over this. If there was anyone that could have risen above depression or chemical imbalance, it would have been our dad. But it's a real thing. That is no respecter of persons. I believe we are much more caring and compassionate people because we were forced to go down this road. And we want to thank you, Mom, who stood by Dad throughout all the treatments and appointments and ups and downs. It was a rough road, but she's a tough cookie whose faith in God kept her strong. I believe there's another good thing that Dad's battle with mental illness brought about. Dad was no longer able to fight all his own battles. So also at 50, Dad made a decision to ask Jesus to become his Lord and Savior. Yes, he still had to deal with depression, but he now had faith that the Lord would help him through whatever battles he had to face. And the Lord did. It wasn't an easy or smooth road at times. But on Sunday morning at 10:10, Dad's faith became sight. With arms wide open, Jesus welcomed our dad to his forever home, where he's no longer bedridden. He no longer has the trouble with mental health. This is how I'm picturing our dad now. And this is how I've pictured heaven ever since Maurice was in Ukraine. I can't remember the year now, but he was working at an invalid orphanage. And this invalid orphanage had the worst of the worst in deformed children. And Maurice called home one day, crying to break his heart. Now, of all that he had seen, I had never heard him cry like this before. I was at work and he called and he was just sobbing. One of the workers at the orphanage had come asking him for a hammer. So he had asked what she wanted it for, and when she told him that she wanted to nail shut a casket, he said, "That's fine." He said, I'll come and do it for you. So anyway, he did. He went and helped her with that. And then they loaded the little casket into the back of their delivery van and proceeded to go outside the city to bury this little boy. Like, not to a cemetery, nothing around, just a bare open field. They dug a hole, stuck him in. That was it. Like, Maurice's first thought was, like, we treat our animals better than that. He was so distraught. Anyways, there's this big Catholic church just outside the property. So after that, then he got friends with the priests there, and then they started doing proper burials for the children. But since Maurice relayed that story to me, and it was my comfort to him at the time, I said, but Maurice, that little boy is not in that casket anymore. He's with Jesus. He's laughing and running and playing in the most beautiful fields you've ever seen. And that's how I picture our dad. He's in those fields, playing with those children. No deformities anymore for any of them. Nobody's bedridden. Nobody's sick or in pain. I just believe that's where our dad is right now. And Dad wanted us to experience whatever life had to offer. He seemed to always be young at heart, like taking that outhouse door off and using it for a board to water ski on. Yeah, he was always up for that kind of thing. Remember floating the outhouse down? Yeah, we rode to Birch Lake again, and this was, in our kind of early stages there. And anyway, figured he wanted a little more comfort when it comes to having to do your business. So there was a park up the street that had this, I guess, forgotten outhouse.
We'll call it that.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, so next thing you know, he's building a little raft, floating the outhouse down Birchy Lake, installing it so we could use it. Yeah. Anyways, I've sidetracked there. He always told us You can do anything you put your mind to. He didn't believe there were limitations. If nobody else had done it, it didn't mean we couldn't do it. He also found time to do everything that needed to be done around the yard and the house. Not too many dollars were spent for someone else to repair whatever went wrong with whatever we owned. He was a jack of all trades. To us, he was Superman. He was the strongest kind of man with a handshake that many tried to avoid. Things never seemed to rattle him. If someone said, "That can't be fixed," Dad would say, "Let me have a look at it." And most often it was returned in fine working order. He just loved the challenge. If he didn't have the tools for the job, he'd make them or figure out another way. We grew up with our very own MacGyver. Trevor says that's why today he doesn't look at problems as unsolvable. There is a way. The fact that Dad had very little formal education always bothered him, but it never hindered him. All the education in the world couldn't have made him a better dad. Both boys have been in some pretty rough parts of the world, and because of the life skills learned from Dad, they have not only survived, but thrived. Sometimes they have been in very dark places in their lives, but it is in those dark places that the seeds Dad had planted in them as children began to sprout. Dad taught us to be resilient and that persistence will always overcome resistance. We'd like to encourage parents to never give up on your kids, but to continue to invest in them. Be good role models. Your kids will never forget your investment in them. And like many investments, sometimes it takes years to reap the benefit you were hoping for, but stay the course. It'll be worth it. Make sure your kids know that no matter how long they are traveling in the wrong direction, it's never too late to turn around. Dad's love of the outdoors was second only to his love for his family. He loved hunting and fishing, but he instilled in us that you don't kill it if you're not going to eat it, or know someone who will. And when it came to cod fishing, you had to be up before dawn and headed out the bay to be the first boat out to get the biggest fish. That one I never did buy into, although the boat rarely left the wharf without me in it. And salmon fishing was the same. While he would never say it, I know he wanted to be the first one on the river. And that happened a lot of times before he'd go to mill at 8 o'clock. Just like his love for cutting firewood. It was like an addiction. He'd get up at daylight and go down back and cut wood until it was time to go to the mill. Dad leaves us huge shoes to fill. He always inspired us to do things to help improve the quality of life for others, to strive to be better than we were yesterday. Thus the name of our business, Tulk's Be Better Farm. Dad was so proud of the bee man. And he told him that all the time. And he was so proud of Maurice's work with children in Africa, Ukraine, Ecuador, and Haiti. And although we told him all the time, I don't think he ever really grasped how instrumental he was in helping us carry out the task that God had given us to do. Sunday morning, while Trevor was holding Dad's hand for those few moments before he went to heaven, the same hands that were so strong and did so much for so many and held and hugged us our whole life were now looking to Trevor for comfort. And as Dad squeezed Trevor's hand for the last time, and Trevor had to let his best buddy go, he was reminded again of just how much those hands had guided and led him throughout his life. And this is Maurice's final words for for him, Dad was usually Papa. Maurice says, "When I think of my Papa, I think of my heavenly Papa, because that's who he looked like my whole life. He mirrored his unconditional love, his unending mercy, and his over-the-top, oh-so-generous kindness. Every time we spoke, he told me how much he loved me. Every time he saw me, he'd wrap me up in one of his long hugs. I wasn't deserving, I wasn't worthy, yet he loved me anyways. There is no one on earth who taught me more about the love of my heavenly Papa than my earthly Papa. It was his love that compelled me to fall into the arms of the one who loves us the most, and to devote my life to doing whatever he commands, and for that I can't thank my dad enough." I want to give a big, big thank you to the Carmelite staff. You guys will never know how much your patience, because sometimes that could be a handful. We know that. Yep. But as sweet as he could be sometimes, he could be a little trying to deal with. But seriously, lying in bed 24/7, maybe we all would have moments when we were a little less lovable. But anyway, they handled him with so much care and respect. And there were times with some of the staff were more demonstrative, I suppose, in how they dealt with Dad, and how they showed affection and stuff. But there were some I wondered about sometimes, like, what's happening when we're not around? But anyway, God let me see that, because there were a few times that I left my phone accidentally in his room when I left at night and would have to go back and get it. And so these workers, they didn't know I was in the building. They thought I was gone. So I would just quietly go down the hall, and several times one of the workers would be in with Dad doing something with him. And they were having the big old conversations, and they were just enjoying each other's company. And so that brought great comfort, knowing that even when we weren't around, Dad was being well looked after. Brad, I hope you bring this back to the rest of your co-workers. Brad was with us
Forever grateful.
Yes, Brad was with us the morning Dad passed, and he was just the best. Thank you, Brad. And our friend Lisa at the Carmelite. Lisa is a ray of sunshine in that whole building, Lisa Dormady. She had hoped to be here today. We wanted her to be an honorary pallbearer. For those of you who don't know Lisa, she's a 54-year-old girl with MS, who goes anywhere around town in a motorized wheelchair. You've probably seen her with the little orange flag flying. But she's a bundle of life. Oh, she's just been... And anyway, we connected right from the get-go. And she would visit Dad even when we weren't there, and come down and have lunches with us, and sing to Dad when we weren't there. She was always bringing joy to his days. And what I'm going to miss most about my dad now, from his later years, is no more hugs and kisses. No more hearing, you know what?
Dad loves you.
Yeah. When he'd say that, you know what? What he meant was, you know I love you. And then the other times he'd say, I love you from the top of your head to the soles of your feet. And this is not just every now and again we'd hear this stuff. This was every visit. And no more, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. I mean, here the man was just lying in bed. Even the last day, the Saturday, he died Sunday morning, even Saturday night, when he just had the energy to barely move his lips, he said, "Now, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know." Yeah, and no more seeing his face light up when we bring his favorite foods. Yeah, especially the strawberries. Central UPIC has lost their biggest consumer of strawberries. So I tell you, the last couple of years, there wasn't hardly a day that he didn't have strawberries. So that's how we kind of knew the end was in sight, because the last 10 days, if we could get one strawberry into him, that was it. But anyway, I don't know. I think I've shared what.
Pretty well.
Yeah. Well, again, sorry if it didn't all run together smoothly and here and there, but we just wanted to do our final thing for our dad. I won't say it's our final thing, because us living our lives now, he's living through us. Everything he's taught us will live on in us. And thank you guys all for coming. Thank you, Myrna, for your beautiful song and thoughts. Myrna has helped train many of the people who help take care of Dad. So in that, we are very thankful, because it's not a glamorous job. But we are so thankful for everybody who's come today, taking out time out of your busy schedules and summer weather. Thank you. It means so much. Every little thought and cookie and just a phone call or a message, you don't realize how much it means till you're going through the situation yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene and Trevor. I'd like to say hello to Maurice, who, if he's not watching live now because of Wi-Fi connections, he will later. And so we say hello to Maurice today as well. We're going to stand and sing the hymn, "When We All Get to Heaven." Sing the wondrous love of Jesus. Let's stand together and sing this hymn together. Sing the wondrous love of Jesus. Sing his mercy and his grace. In the mansions bright and blessed, he'll prepare for us a place. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. Shout the victory while we walk the pilgrim pathway. Clouds will overspread the sky, but when traveling days are over, not a shadow, not a sign. When we all get to heaven, rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Let us then be true and faithful, trust and serving every day. Just one glimpse of Him in glory, when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Let us then be true and faithful, seated. I'm going to switch mics. Before I get into the few words I have to share today, I just want to send along condolences and assurances of prayer from Pastor Elaine Rideout, who contacted me last evening to pass along her sympathies to you, Arlene, Marie, Trevor, and Maurice, the family. And she's thinking of you today. Well, we got a ring. If you'll notice in the bulletin, it's the word reflection. That means to a pastor, keep it short. So that's what I will endeavor to do today, all right? And I've entitled the few words I have to share simply this: death versus life, or the great face-off between death and life. As I alluded to earlier, we gather this morning, and it soon will be afternoon, to mourn the loss, and we do want to celebrate the life of Art Tulk, a wonderful, faithful, loving husband and father, a man I met not long after moving here in 1997. Can you believe we are finishing up, Wendy and I, 25 years this August here at Evangel? And I remember Art sitting down in this area somewhere Sunday after Sunday. And I remember him at 50-plus events and 50-plus excursions. Who can forget the Woody Island trip in Placentia Bay? On that trip, I remember being challenged to horseshoes by Art. He was good at that, and he took no mercy on me. And he did well. I couldn't beat him. And yes, I do remember those Sunday morning handshakes. There were times I tried to avoid him for fear of that handshake. I mean, he left you like this. But as we know, as was already said in the tribute, over time, sickness got the best of Art, and he wasn't able to attend church and church events anymore. It's been a while since we've had Art here in the sanctuary, and we have missed him. We have. So we gather to bid farewell to this fine gentleman. And we also gather to encourage each other and to look for hope in the midst of measured sadness. Another fine gentleman has left us. But we also rejoice and celebrate that Art today is with the Lord, whom he loved and served, and he is no longer in his body of sickness and misery. And I salute you again today, Arlene, for shining the spotlight on mental illness, because our family has traveled a rough road as well lately, as you might know, because of mental sickness. So just a thought from me today. The Apostle Paul wrote about what happens when we die in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. So let me read the paraphrase from the contemporary passage from the contemporary paraphrase, the Message. We know that when these bodies of ours are taken down like tents and folded away, they will be replaced by resurrection bodies in heaven, God-made, not handmade, and we'll never have to relocate our tents again. Sometimes we can hardly wait to move, and so we cry out in frustration. Compared to what's coming, living conditions around here seem like a stopover in an unfurnished shack, and we're tired of it. We've been given a glimpse of the real thing, our true home, our resurrection bodies. The Spirit of God whets our appetite by giving us a taste of what's ahead. He puts a little of heaven in our hearts so that we'll never settle for less. And that's why we live with such a deep peace today in this service, in this setting, because of this hope. As Christians, as Art was, we live and die with such a hope. Come on, you won't see us drooping our heads or dragging our feet. Cramped tent conditions here don't get us down. They only remind us of the spacious living conditions ahead when this tent is folded. It's what we trust in but don't yet see that keeps us going, right? That's why we don't sorrow here today as those who don't have a hope. And that sounds so cliche sometimes because in these settings we say it so often. But Christians do have hope in life and in death. In the tent now, and when the tent is folded, all the more. Do you suppose a few ruts in the road or rocks in the path are going to stop us as Christians? When the time comes, we'll be plenty ready to exchange exile for homecoming, or sickness for a perfect body, or a mortal body for a body that is immortal. That's why we do not sorrow for art as those who do not have a hope. In John chapter 11 of the Bible, we are told the wonderful account of Jesus raising his friend Lazarus from the dead. And when Jesus arrived at the home of Lazarus and his sisters Mary and Martha, Lazarus had already been dead for 4 days. Mary and her sister were a little upset and a little put out with Jesus for not arriving sooner to take care of things. And as Jesus arrived, Martha went out to meet him. And she says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Oh, your brother will rise again." And Martha said, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection of the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life, and he who believes in me will live even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die." Do you believe this? "Yes, Lord," she said. "I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world." At this time of devastating loss, Jesus shared with Martha a statement that is vital for us to hear here today. Why? Because when someone we love dies, there is an emptiness in us that results from an honest but often unspoken question: is there really anything beyond the grave? People have many different ideas about death. Some believe death is simply the end. When you die, that's the end of the story. Your book closes. The end. Life to these people is basically a sprint to nothingness. Life is ultimately meaningless. Well, others believe there's some kind of recycling program that takes place after death. If you live a good life, you come back to a better life. If you live a poor life, you may pay for it in the next. Now, there's no evidence that any of this is true, but the second one, there is at least some kind of purpose to living. For many, death is way out there. Some really weird beliefs. For some, death is eerie and scary and frightful as well. Death has a way of doing that to us, right? It shocks us, it scares us sometimes and sobers us up. Even the most suave and debonair of young men is forced to stand with open mouth and wide eyes before an open casket. Cemeteries aren't much better. I mean, there's just something about these fresh mounds of gravel that makes us shudder sometimes. Something makes us drive faster past the cemetery late at night because we don't want our lights to shine on a headstone. Because death makes us think and realize our own mortality, our own weaknesses. Death frightens us because we instinctively know that someday we too shall die. And most of all, death makes us, I guess, think. It makes us think about our own lives, about our own priorities, about our own goals, about ourselves, and the end. When will it come? How will it come? Right? And we hate to think about that, so we avoid death at all costs. There are so many fears related to the fear of death. We fear of dying alone. We fear dying a painful death. We fear what may happen after we die. We fear leaving our loved ones behind and what will happen to them. We fear the unknown, and death is the ultimate unknown. We fear death because of sins sometimes. We fear of standing before God after we die. And so we do whatever we can to avoid death at all costs. We change the subject. We'd rather talk about something else. It's so morbid. Yet, death always comes. Always. But hear this. Death versus life. Hear this. For the believer, for the Christian, it does not have to be that way. Get this, Jesus taught that there is life beyond the grave. There is life, Martha. I am the resurrection and the life. He taught that there is not only some life, but eternal life. The life the Bible describes as one where pain is gone and tears of sadness are banished and heartache is swallowed up by victory. Death, according to the Bible, is not the end. It is just the pathway to a new beginning. It's the transition from this life to the next. For the believer, or Tulk, death is just that, a transition. It's moving time. Although the body ceases to function, the spirit lives on. Death, according to the Bible, is a change of status. That which perishes is exchanged for that which is imperishable. Death ushers us into the presence of the living God. Death for the believer brings us into eternity to be forever with our loving Lord. Yeah, I believe that life wins over death in Christ. All of us must face death. Hebrews 9:27 says, man is destined to die. In light of this, we should all take great care to live in such a way that when it comes our time to die, we are ready to face God as Art was. You see, death is not death if you know the Lord. It is life. And that would be Art's testimony today. Death is merely a change of place, a change of state, a transferal from one realm of existence into another. Death is not death if it kills no part of us except that which hindered us from perfect life. Death is not death if it raises us in a moment from darkness into light, from weakness into strength, from sinfulness into holiness. Death is not death if it perfects our faith by sight and lets us behold the one in whom we have believed. Death is not death if it rids us of doubt and fear, of sickness and disease, of sorrow and sadness. Death is not death, for Christ has conquered death for himself and for those who trust in him. No, in him, I believe death becomes life. So in this memorial service today, I preach life over death. Martin Luther said we should live with the day of our death constantly before our eyes. Death is a problem. It was a problem in Bible times, and it's still a problem today. Death, they say, is the great leveler, the ultimate equalizer. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, two of the richest men on the planet will die someday, and so will the poorest man in the poorest village in Bangladesh or Ethiopia. It's appointed to once die. And that's an appointment no one can skip and no one can postpone. But when you have faith as Art did, it's not a tragedy or even a mournful thing, really, rich or poor, famous or not so famous. It's a transition, a promotion, a homegoing. What does the Christian faith have to say to the problem of death? Well, I believe Easter is God's answer to death. He did it 2,000 years ago on Easter Sunday morning by rising from the dead. Just as Lazarus was called out of the grave, Jesus has conquered the grave as well. And so will our loved ones, and so will our Tulk. So from my perspective, life in Jesus, and because of Jesus, life wins over death. And that's an eternal win. Can you say amen to that? Amen. Stand with me, please. Stand with me, please. We're going to sing the closing hymn together. I'm going to switch mics again. When the trumpet of the Lord shall sound. Yeah, Art's gone to be with Jesus now. But someday in the future, a major event is going to take place when the body and the soul are reunited on resurrection morning, when the trumpet of the Lord shall sound and time shall be no more, and the morning breaks eternal, bright and fair. It's because of Jesus we make it. It's because of Jesus we get there. It's because of Jesus we make it to heaven. It's because of Jesus life will win over death every time. So when the roll is called up yonder, will you be there? When the roll is called, Art Tuck, present. How about you? Let's sing it together, when the trumpet of the Lord. When the trumpet of the Lord shall sound, and time shall be no more, and the morning breaks eternal, bright and fair. When the saints of earth shall gather over on the other shore, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, 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 I'll be there. On that bright and cloudless morning, when the dead in Christ shall rise, and the glory of his resurrection share, when his chosen ones shall gather to their home beyond the skies, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, 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 I'll be there. Let us labor for the Master from the dawn to setting sun. Let us talk along his wondrous love and care. And when all of life is over and our work on earth is done, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, 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 I'll be there. The service will continue at the graveside. Let me remind you that we have refreshments prepared. There's a pot of soup out there. And we're inviting all of you to come back and join the family after we finish up at the graveside.